Think about the last time you actually watched the sunrise. For most people reading this, that memory is months old. For many, it is years. Some people cannot remember the last time at all. And yet, for almost the entirety of human history, for hundreds of thousands of years, the sunrise was not optional content. It was the signal that the day had started, the moment when everything changed from dark to light, from rest to activity, from night to life. Ancient Egyptians built temples aligned to capture the first light of the solstice. Indigenous cultures around the world developed ceremonies, prayers, and rituals centered on the rising sun. Hunter-gatherers woke with it not because of discipline or routine, but because their entire existence was organized around it. Your body still expects that signal. Even now, sitting in a room with artificial light, staring at a screen, operating on a schedule that has almost nothing to do with where the sun is. Your biology is running on systems that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years around one thing: the sun coming up every morning. And when it does not get the signal it evolved to receive, things quietly go wrong in ways most people never connect back to their morning habits. Subscribe to Freud Mind and let us get into it. To understand why the sunrise matters to your biology, you need to understand how completely different your ancestors' relationship with light was compared to yours. For almost all of human history, there were no artificial light sources capable of meaningfully extending the day. Fire existed, but its light was warm-toned, dim, and limited in range. For practical purposes, when the sun went down, meaningful visual activity largely stopped. When the sun came up, it started again. The human body organized itself entirely around this cycle. Every system in your body that relates to timing, to sleep, to energy, to mood, to hormones, to immunity, to digestion, all of it evolved to operate within a framework defined by the rising and setting of the sun. The agricultural revolution began roughly 10,000 years ago, which sounds like a long time, but represents less than 5% of modern human evolutionary history. Electric light was invented less than 200 years ago. Artificial light bright enough to genuinely disrupt biological rhythms has been widely available for perhaps 100 years. Smartphones, which produce the specific type of light most disruptive to biological timing, have been common for less than 2 decades. In evolutionary terms, your body has had essentially no time to adapt. The ancient systems are still looking for the signals they evolved to receive. Your circadian rhythm, your body's internal biological clock, is a precise molecular mechanism operating in nearly every cell in your body, running on a cycle of roughly 24 hours, and it is calibrated by light, by the kind of light that the sun produces in the morning. Your circadian rhythm is probably one of the most important biological systems you have never spent much time thinking about, and morning light is its primary calibration signal. Here is how it works. Your eyes contain specialized cells, called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, which is a complicated name for cells that are not involved in vision at all. Their job is to detect ambient light levels and send that information directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny cluster of neurons in the brain that functions as the master biological clock. When these cells detect the specific quality and intensity of morning light, they send a signal that the biological clock uses to anchor the timing of almost every process in the body. The reason morning light is different from afternoon light, and radically different from artificial light, comes down to the spectrum and the timing. Morning sunlight contains high levels of blue spectrum light. Not the same blue light your phone produces, but natural blue light in the context of the full spectrum of sunrise illumination. This specific combination tells the master clock in the brain that it is morning. The timing of this signal matters as much as its intensity. Your clock is designed to receive a morning light signal shortly after waking, and when it does, it sets the timing for dozens of downstream biological processes that will unfold throughout the day. When you do not get morning light, when you wake up in a dark room, spend the first hours of your day under artificial indoor lighting, and never actually step outside in the morning, your biological clock operates without its primary calibration signal. The result is that your body's internal timing becomes progressively less synchronized with the actual time of day. One of the most counterintuitive findings in sleep science is that what you do in the morning significantly affects how well you sleep at night. Most people think of sleep as something you manage in the evening, avoiding caffeine, dimming lights, keeping screens away before bed. All of that matters, but the foundation of healthy sleep timing is laid in the morning, by light exposure, hours before anyone thinks about going to bed. The hormone melatonin is the primary biological signal for sleep onset. Its release in the evening is what tells the brain and body that it is time to sleep. But melatonin release does not happen independently. Its timing is directly linked to the timing of your morning light exposure. When you receive bright natural light in the morning, particularly in the first 1 to 2 hours after waking, it triggers a cascade that, approximately 12 to 16 hours later, results in appropriately timed melatonin release in the evening. This is why people who get regular morning light exposure tend to fall asleep more easily at night, maintain more consistent sleep schedules, and report higher quality sleep overall. The common misconception is that sleep is primarily a nighttime problem to be solved by nighttime interventions. It is more accurate to say that healthy sleep is a 24-hour biological process, and the morning is where a significant portion of it is set up. People who consistently skip morning light are essentially starting each day without calibrating the system that will govern their ability to sleep that night. Shift workers and people with highly variable sleep schedules often struggle not just because they sleep at unusual times, but because their light exposure patterns are inconsistent, constantly disrupting the calibration signal that the biological clock depends on. Cortisol has a genuinely bad reputation, and like most reputations, it is not entirely accurate. Most people have heard cortisol described as the stress hormone, and in the context of chronic stress that is fair, elevated cortisol over long periods is associated with a range of negative health outcomes. But cortisol is not just the stress hormone. It is also a natural, essential component of waking biology. The cortisol awakening response is a genuine physiological phenomenon in which cortisol levels rise naturally in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, typically increasing by 50 to 100% above baseline. To help the body transition from the relatively metabolically quiet state of sleep to the energy demands of an active day, morning light supports and regulates this natural cortisol response. Exposure to bright, natural light shortly after waking appears to help produce a healthy cortisol awakening response. This translates practically into better morning energy, greater alertness, improved focus in the morning hours, and a more functional transition from sleep to waking activity. The problem occurs when cortisol remains elevated at the wrong times, or chronically at high levels due to ongoing stress. The morning cortisol peak, supported by appropriate morning light, is not a stress response. It is a functional biological mechanism that you are meant to have. People who spend their mornings in dim indoor environments without natural light exposure may experience a blunted or mistimed cortisol awakening response, which can contribute to the morning grogginess, slow cognitive start, and poor energy that many people have simply accepted as normal. Indoor lighting is dramatically less bright than natural outdoor light. Outdoor light intensity is typically around 100,000 lux. A bright indoor office runs somewhere between 200 and 500 lux. This difference in light intensity has measurable effects on brain function. The sluggish, slightly foggy feeling that many people experience in windowless offices or dimly lit indoor environments throughout the day is not entirely psychological. It reflects a real neurological response to insufficient light. Studies examining the effects of natural light on cognitive performance consistently find advantages in attention, reaction time, and problem solving in naturally lit environments compared to artificially lit ones. Workers in offices with adequate natural light report better mood, higher energy, and better sleep than those without. School students perform differently in classrooms with natural versus artificial light. The brain is not just looking for light as a general stimulus. It is looking for the specific quality of natural light, with its full spectrum and its dynamic variation throughout the day that it evolved to operate in. Being outside in the morning, watching the sunrise, or simply experiencing the early light of the day puts the brain into the environmental conditions it actually evolved for. Psychologists who study awe, the emotional response to encountering something vast, beautiful, or beyond one's ordinary frame of reference, have found consistent effects on well-being, perspective, and mood. Watching a sunrise is one of the most reliable natural triggers for the experience of awe available to ordinary human beings. The sky doing something dramatic, the colors shifting, the light growing, the world becoming visible again. These are not just aesthetically pleasant. They engage a psychological response that research suggests has measurable effects on how we relate to our own problems, our own importance, and our own place in the world. Experiences of awe have been found to produce a sense of what researchers call the small self, a temporary but genuine shift in perspective, in which individual concerns feel smaller and less pressing relative to something larger. They are associated with increased feelings of gratitude and connection, reduced rumination, and an improved ability to take perspective on problems that felt overwhelming before the experience. The fact that the sunrise happens regardless of your schedule, your mood, your problems, or your circumstances, that it has been happening every single morning without exception for 5 billion years, has its own psychological weight. The sunrise is happening in the morning, in cool air, in relative quiet. The world is only beginning to fill with sound and activity. Birds are singing, specifically the dawn chorus, the remarkable daily event in which bird species sing with particular intensity in the period around sunrise. Birds sing at dawn for biological reasons, to establish and defend territory, to signal fitness to potential mates, to communicate with others of their species in the acoustically favorable conditions of early morning, when sound travels more clearly than in the warmer, more turbulent air of midday. The result is a natural soundscape of unusual richness and complexity that occurs specifically at sunrise, every day, largely unheard by most modern humans, because most modern humans are asleep or indoors. Humans have lived alongside the dawn chorus for as long as there have been humans. There is genuine research suggesting that natural sounds, birdsong in particular, are associated with reduced stress and psychological recovery from mental fatigue. The sunset is beautiful in a different way. It tends to happen in warmer air, later in the day when the environment is more active, with the accumulated noise and stimulation of the day already present. The psychological experience of watching the sun go down is frequently more reflective and often more melancholy than sunrise. It marks an ending rather than a beginning. Both experiences have value, but they are genuinely different, and the morning experience arrives in a context of quiet, coolness, freshness, and beginning that the evening simply cannot replicate. Morning air is cooler, which has physiological effects on alertness and mood. Cool temperatures are associated with wakefulness and mental sharpness. The morning environment is typically quieter. Fewer cars, fewer voices, fewer of the stimuli that human attention systems spend the day processing and adapting to. Fewer people means lower social demand and lower background stimulation. The combination of these environmental factors creates a specific sensory context that is qualitatively different from the rest of the day. This is also simply a time when most people are alone with their experience in a way that is rare. There is no particular social obligation in the early morning. You are not required to respond to anyone. The world has not yet placed its demands on your attention. For people who find that their days are extremely reactive, constantly responding to messages, requests, obligations, and unexpected developments, the early morning, and the sunrise specifically, can represent a rare period of unstructured time that belongs to no one else. The neuroscience of nature exposure has developed substantially in recent years, and the findings are consistent enough that some healthcare systems have begun considering green space access as a health variable. Even brief exposure to natural environments produces measurable effects on brain activity, cortisol levels, blood pressure, and self-reported mood. The concept of attention restoration describes the mechanism through which natural environments allow the cognitive systems that handle voluntary, directed attention to recover from fatigue. Voluntary attention is the kind you use when you concentrate on a task, manage a complex conversation, or navigate competing priorities. And it depletes with sustained use. Natural environments appear to engage a different kind of attention. Involuntary, effortless, drawn by intrinsically interesting stimuli like moving light, changing colors, and sound without informational demand, which allows the voluntary systems to rest and recover. People who regularly spend time outdoors tend to show better sustained attention, better working memory performance, better mood, and lower reported stress levels compared to those who spend their mornings entirely indoors. There is a natural question that arises in all of this, and it is worth addressing honestly. Can watching the sunrise actually make you happier? The evidence suggests a meaningful yes, with appropriate caveats. It is not a cure for clinical depression, and presenting it as one would be irresponsible. But the combination of factors involved in a regular morning outdoor experience, morning light exposure, circadian rhythm calibration, natural environment, physical activity if you walk to the view, reduced screen time in the morning. Each has independent research support for positive effects on mood, and the combination appears to be more powerful than any single element alone. The routine aspect matters too. Regular morning outdoor experiences create a consistent anchor to the day that appears to have benefits for mood and sense of purpose independent of the specific activity. Having a reason to get up and go outside, something that is visually and emotionally engaging, something that happens reliably every morning regardless of what else is going on. These are not trivial psychological goods. You do not need to wake before dawn every day to benefit from more morning light exposure. The practical suggestions for incorporating this into ordinary modern life are modest and genuinely accessible. Watching the sunrise even once a week rather than never is a meaningful change. Stepping outside within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking, even if it is just to stand on a balcony or in a garden, for 10 to 20 minutes, exposes you to the morning light your circadian rhythm is looking for. Opening curtains immediately upon waking and getting light into your environment as early as possible, even if you cannot go outside, is better than the alternative. Taking a short walk in the morning, even a 10-minute one, combines light exposure with physical movement and environmental variety in a way that addresses multiple biological needs simultaneously. Modern life has created a situation that would be almost unrecognizable to every human being who came before us. We wake in dark rooms, immediately checking devices that produce light in exactly the wrong spectrum, at exactly the wrong intensity for biological morning calibration. We eat, work, commute, and live through most of the day in environments our biological systems were not designed for. And then we struggle to sleep at night, feel foggy in the mornings, cannot concentrate the way we want to, feel vaguely and persistently tired for reasons we cannot identify. And we accept all of this as normal, as just how life is. It is not how life is. It is how modern indoor life is, and modern indoor life is vanishingly new. The body you're living in was built for a different morning, one that started with the colors of the sky changing, the air cooling slightly, the birds beginning, and the gradual arrival of light that has been happening at the same hour every single morning since before there were humans to watch it. For thousands of generations, the sunrise was not something humans watched for pleasure or wellness or mindfulness practice. It was simply the beginning of life resuming. the signal that another day had started, the anchor around which every biological system in the human body organized its timing and function. Modern routines have replaced that signal with phone alarms and artificial light and closed curtains and the glow of screens. The signal has not changed. The sun is still doing exactly what it has always done, every morning, without exception. Your brain still recognizes it. And in some quiet, biological sense, it has been waiting for you to go back outside and see it. Like and subscribe to Freud Mind. If this kind of deep look at everyday human experience is your thing, there's a lot more where this came from.